slight variation in the two numbers. Out of this, about 8.5 out of 15.6 is contributed by Chitral River, and the rest is actually generated in within the Afghanistan. So you can see that Pakistan is not only an upper riparian, is a significant contributor to the water resource. Now, an assessment has also been made in terms of water demand, and by the way, the source of this table is primarily a study done by the World Bank in 2010, and I have extracted the information from that. Of course, compared with other studies, but this is the most authentic and complete work. Now, in terms of the demand, the total demand is about 3.1 million acre feet, and that is possible up to year 2030, according to the estimates in Afghanistan, which comprises of urban and rural drinking water, environmental flows, requirement for ionic mining enterprise, and the irrigation requirements. So all told, the total requirement in terms of million cubic meters per year is about 3.8 or 3.1 million acre feet. What I have concluded here is that out of the total amount of 3874, this is the total demand. Out of this, about 1.8 is already being consumed. So the total impact of additional demand, if all these uses and demands are developed, will be 2 million cubic meters per year, or about 1.7 to 1.8 million acre feet. Why I did it is that to give you an idea of the scale of the thing, that out of 15 or 16 that we are getting, the total impact, if all the demand that has been projected is fully met, on Pakistan, the impact will be of the order of 1.8 million acre feet of water reduction. So that we should have a placement in mind, because whenever we think of, we learn about developments in Afghanistan, about new projects and new dams or new initiatives, there's immediately a bit of a nervousness as to, I mean, we will be probably converted into some barren lands, or we'll suffer tremendously. But the impact is as shown in this table. Now, on the other hand, the same study has also looked at the possibilities of hydropower development and storage projects. They have identified 13 dams. Out of 13, there are 3 which are run-of-river projects, and the other are storage projects of different storage. I think I have a table that I will show you. Once again, these are the potentials that have been identified. And these are the 3 basins. This is the Kunar side of the Chitral and Kunar basin. This is the Panjshir basin, and this is the Logar Upper Kabul basin. The water in this basin is about 73% of the whole. The availability of water in Panjshir basin is more than what the demand is in this area, whereas the availability of water in the Logar Upper Kabul basin is less than what is actually needed. And in fact, Kabul city is here, which already is populated by 4 billion plus people. The projections are that it can be as large as 7 or 8 million. They are short of water, and the study identifies various options. One of the options is that they may transfer some of the surplus water from here through a conveyance channel into the Logar Upper Kabul basin to meet the demand. So there are other options, but I don't want to get into that. On the other hand, there are projects in this area where Pakistan is also a contributor in the overall availability of water. So when Pakistani side, whenever we get news that there is a possibility of so many dams, once again it sends a shivering message that of course, oh my God, there are going to be so many dams, and therefore Pakistan may become dry. Pakistan may suffer extensively. Now, this is the summary of those dams. You can see that the total storage capacity, live storage capacity that is estimated according to that study is about 3.9 million acre feet or 4.793 million meter cube. And if in terms of the yes, this one. And the total, including the dead storage, the total capacity is 5.7 million acre feet. So, whereas the demand, in fact, if the demand is fully developed, it could be 1.8 million acre feet. The capacity, storage capacity can cause an impact of about 3.9 or 4 million acre feet. So consequently, the feeling is that if there are so many dams which are built, then Pakistan may be deprived of water. And so there are positions are presented that Pakistan should fight its case on the basis of existing uses, because all of the water is coming to Pakistan, and Pakistan can claim, just as in the case of Pakistan-India dialogue, that the existing uses must be protected, and all the uses of the water that Pakistan is receiving at Nowshera are going to be our claim, and therefore we should oppose it. So that is the kind of approach that had been, that immediately, because there's a perception and probably miscommunication about, first of all, one has to understand that all of these dams will in any case not be constructed by 2030. Reason being that if the demand is only 1.8 additional demand, then we don't need to construct 3.9. And then the economics and benefits and small.
Sir, the question, is there an estimated cost also of these dams?
Yes, actually the World Bank study identifies an estimation per megawatt and per unit of storage. It has a complete table in it. Now, I was going to come to this a little later, because when I will talk about the benefits, I'm only talking about the perceptions and the issues and the concerns. But once I come to that, I will talk about that. So, ये इसको चलाएं भाई. अब ठीक है. Okay. So as a consequence, the thoughts on Pakistan side are, as Sheikh Saab in the very beginning alluded to, that possibility is that we may divert the Chitral River towards Swat River, and from Swat River we go towards Munda Dam to power generation, then take water to Warsak Dam, and from Warsak Dam to Nowshera. So in other words, there is a thinking that we should, there is some thinking in some quarters that we should demand that our water must be projected. And if there is there's no listener on the Afghanistan side, we should play hardball by threatening or maybe even thinking and in fact making a project in order to transfer the water to the other side.
Is there an existing agreement at this stage?
There is
existing agreement of what sharing?
There's absolutely no agreement. This is precisely the situation. In fact, as a result of this, there have been a number of efforts that there should be some sort of a treaty so that this eventuality does not arise. In fact, the process of making treaties talking about treaties started around year 2000. There have been efforts, a number of efforts, including the Abu Dhabi dialogue, which was the last one, which is the East-West Center has also played role. up till 2015, I could dig out from 22 to 2015, there had been number of meetings and there had been number of times efforts being made, but all of that times the result has not been any positive result. One of the reason was that whenever, in fact, when the Federal Flood Commission convened a meeting in 2011, which was supposed to result into some sort of an agreement, and there is, in fact, there was a draft agreement prepared in 2002. But all of those were based upon the concept that since we had a Pakistan-India treaty, that could be a good model. And so we should use that model. And secondly, we should have data. The data issue that was raised just now. Every time they met, they started talking about treaties based upon the same model of division of water rather than benefits of water. And secondly, on the basis of data, they found that since the 30 years of war, all the gauging stations which were in, if not all, most of the gauging stations have been destroyed. And actually, as Ahmed said, there's not much data at all. So when it came to negotiations, both sides will bring their own briefs. The worst part of the treaty negotiations is that whenever you convene a meeting that we will now discuss and settle the water shares, both sides have their experts either cooking up data or having some data and making their briefs. And both parties hold their briefs. It is very difficult under the present circumstances for these parties to go back and say that we have made that compromise. What happens is they're always afraid of the backlash. So the treaty discussions actually did not move forward at all. And there had been think tanks, just as I said, there had been meetings of the East-West Center, and there had been Abu Dhabi dialogue, and there has been a Bourbon meeting. All these meetings were like having discussions, thinking, talking, and then going home. Not a result at all. Partially because there's no hard data, and partially because there is lack of understanding of each other's position. And thirdly, because of a very fallacious approach, and that was to discuss and sort out what we have in our kitty. In fact, many of the donors, they wanted to be very clear about what is their water and what is our water. So once you know this, then probably you would like to invest, because then you are more sure there will be no difficulties. But this is precisely what is the fallacy is, that once they begin to talk about division of water on the same pattern as it was done in the case of Pakistan and India, the things do not move. Because division here means that Pakistan begins to think that let me protect all of it, because it's all is being used as an existing use, at least as our claim. So it did not move forward. So precisely for this reason, my paper today. After setting up this basis, now I will try to talk about how can we adopt a new approach, which is the benefit sharing approach, in order to come up to a different type of treaty and the steps that we need to follow. First of all, you see the possibility is that there are, we can, of course, technically speaking, we have a project actually, we can move water from Chitral River into Swat River, but that means investment, that means cost. And ultimately, we can, of course, generate more electricity at some of these dams here. That also means a cost. Now, on the other hand, if we work with Afghanistan and give them a confidence that instead of we doing it, we would like to cooperate in the benefit sharing purpose schemes on the projects that you have on the Kunar River, then that the whole scenario will change. My brief, if I go to negotiations, will not say that I have to hold this position. My brief will say that I will here to support you. And once we talk about supporting it, then some of these dams have the capacities in terms of storage capacity. We can say that you can also create a small, more capacity than what you are thinking of, and save some of that for us so that we can utilize as a result of joint benefit sharing. And if that is possible, we can also say that, and if it causes us no concern, we can say that we can fill up that capacity through at the time when there is flood. Because in any case, at the flooding period time, we actually lose water going to sea. So if we can envision and broaden our own view, that we can work together and get the space in their capacity, in their dams, then actually the dams will be constructed there. We will not be creating a difficulty for them to make dams, but in fact, we'll be saying, please do it. And we would like to share the benefits of this capacity if you agree to fill it up at the times of flood and release it at a mutually agreed time. Secondly, this capacity is also going to be of tremendous benefit to us, and I was waiting for in the mornings in the previous session that somebody would talk about the benefits of flood protection. Now, all the data that we had just talked about and everything we talked about, we did not talk about data for flood. In fact, most of the discussion on modeling is more on the supply side, not on the demand side, not on the cost side, not on the finance side, not on the ecological benefits, not on the social benefits, and so on. I'll come to that a little later, but just one more. So having said that, if we can get some capacity here, in fact, since we get a lot of floods almost every next year near Nashera, if there is a management that is, there's no dam here in Pakistan. Varsar Dam is not a storage dam, so we are unable to manage. So if we can get some storage here allocated to us and operated according to our requirements, and of course they can operate the rest at their own requirements, then not only it will give us more water in winter months and early Kharif, it will also give me a late Kharif, or maybe and also at Nashera, it will protect us from the flow. So there, if we look at benefits, then the benefits of working together would be like this.
So that is what actually I also wanted to say, that you have stated, but at the same time, sir, it is going to also support the management of the Trivela reservoir. And maybe a dry season or a wet season, there are two different scenarios. And these days we are talking about various scenarios with regard to filling of the Trivela dam, because the 6th periodic inspection has stated that from 1510 to 1550, we are just going 1 foot every day. And by virtue of that, we are losing too much on the outflow side. So why should not, depending upon the meteorology and hydrology of state, we can have maybe 3 feet or 5 feet in a span of 1 week, and then raise the reservoir, and then dewater it or simply make a drawdown of it. So in that circumstances also, this arrangement can support a lot with regard to our the main Trivela dam, and it is then going to support in the event if there is a dry season. But if there is a wet season, then it can play the role of a balance.
So, thank you very much. Precisely, you see, this is precisely the approach. First, we have to clear in our minds that the moment we hear Afghanistan is doing something, we should not be reactionary. We should take a positive approach and say, this is where we can have benefit sharing. And if we can put in their mind that we are on your side, we are going to work with you, so then we can also get some support in terms of the capacity, in terms of management of floods, in terms of other ancillary benefits if we expand the pie of benefits. Because if we include Trivela, there could be many other that we can add. For instance, if we have more capacity here, we can also have, there are hydroelectric power stations also. So what we can say is that, in fact, we will say that we will not only support the generation, the storage also, but we would also like to support you on the power generation. So if they generate power, we can actually say we want to have more power generation than what you have. So that instead of we diverting and making Munda Dam and Varsar Dam, etc., if we generate here, then we can actually buy electricity from this. This is just very close to the border, across the border, and take it into Sawat and Chitral and other areas. So this will set the basis for power trade, electricity trade across the border. The Afghanistan actually is carrying out electricity trade with the Central Asian states. So this will be another new avenue of benefit sharing, that we will be not thinking of water and agriculture. We will be moving into electricity. Yes.
Thank you very much for bringing the conversation to this point. I want to ask you 3 specific questions. And if you don't have the data or don't want to speak about that right now, what is the electricity generation potential that you have in mind when you say that we can create the electricity? You're talking 1 megawatt, 50 megawatt, or 5 megawatt? Any scope that, and I know that we have discussed earlier, flooding in Rashad every other year, and there is an economic cost that we are studying, and that can be pretty high, and we can offset that by making our stable. But the flooding for now, excess water is every other year. Does it make a business case to make that investment to create a reservoir in our state area of Rajasthan? And third, my apologies, my geography is very poor since my childhood days. Point out to the laser printer location there. Is there a name of that location that we have in mind, or set of locations?
From where? Okay, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. See, these are the locations of the dams. I start from the last point, and this is the lower Kabul sub-basin, and these are the these three locations are the run-of-river projects because there is no storage. Your second question was what is the capacity? The total capacity is 1171 megawatts of the entire 13 dams. And if you look at the lower one, the capacity of the lower basin, which is the Kunar one, is 761 megawatts. It's not a small number. So if not all of them, as I said, all of these projects may not be developed. The World Bank has only identified. In fact, their recommendation is much less. We should say we want more, because if they can do this by spending nothing on any dam or any transfer or anything, here is something which we just by chipping in this little bit, we can get about 761 megawatts. So the location names are Lagman, Kunar, Kama, Sarobi.
And 761 being the most attractive one.
Sorry? Yes. All this is the total of the lower sub-basin. There are other also. So having said that, we can, so the capacity is 1171, out of which 760 is next all along your corridor. And it is a possibility, and not only that, if you open up our imagination, not only that we will get hydro, tomorrow if we have a more hydro, we send back, we are talking about surplus grid capacity right now. So if we can send it back, and it's a small line. It's a question of opening up minds and thinking of benefits. We can actually send it back. In fact, there might be needs when they will need electricity. So as I said, exploring, the whole presentation is about explore. So what I'm saying is not only we look at water, not only we look at storage, not only look at flood, not only we look for agriculture, but we should also think of electricity. And within the electricity, it's not one way, it can be both ways. So that is the situation here. Now, the question is, as I said, now in addition, as was presented earlier in this session, there is a possibility of reduction in availability of water because of climate change. And that's a real possibility. Of course, there are experts who have worked out numbers, and I have found between 10 to 20%, but the reduction could be 20%. In addition, as I identified earlier, we can actually reduce the demand can be actually, the additional demand placed on the system is about 1.8 million acre feet. Now, if that is the case, and if Pakistan is feeling at all concerned that, oh my God, our water will be reduced, then the option is to also look at your use efficiency. We are inefficient. Our efficiency is about 41, 42%. The Afghanistan's efficiency is about 25 to 30%. So there's a lot of hidden water in the system. Instead of quarreling or trying to divert or thinking of let's have a discussion on treaty and how much water is yours and how much water is ours, if we take an approach that says we will share the benefits, we work together, we make a program, find more water by doing efficiency improvement. So that means that the two parties begin to work. The whole scenario of competition and talking for shares and snatching shares will change into becoming working together. And Pakistan has more expertise as compared to Afghanistan in terms of efficiency, better use, irrigation, and so on and so forth. Of course, with the help of other outside support, one can actually provide manpower, institutional support, demonstration, showcase projects, make projects, feasibility studies, and therefore there's a lot of scope of benefit sharing of water that we can save in this basis. Now, there was some talk about watershed management. These, when we talk about shares, we forget about who is going to manage the watershed. In fact, the watershed of Kabul is under threat. The trees are being cut after the war. There has been a lot of depletion in the forest, and therefore, if we look at the system as an integrated system, where we look right from the watershed up to the actual downstream uses, then there's a lot of scope for doing watershed management. And again, Pakistan can take a step forward to support in this. I've talked about electricity trade. Now, quality of water is also under threat, particularly in the Kabul region, in the lower, upper Kabul and Logar region, where Kabul is short of water. It's extracting groundwater, and most of the usage of water is not treated. The unused water is not treated. There's open defecation. A large number of people go outside for toiletries and so on. So it is all the output is going into the same stream. And if Pakistan again begins to be forward-looking and let them utilize the water, develop water, help them develop water, and the quality of water improves, then it's not only good for them, but it's also good for us. Now, next step comes to benefit sharing should not be just water sharing, infrastructure sharing. The benefit sharing also requires that you also share the costs, because benefits, when we talk of benefit sharing, we are basically talking about net benefits, because there are some costs and there are some benefits. And as Sheikh Saab alluded to, there are some costs to the project. And there is a whole estimation, of course, preliminary estimation in the World Bank report also. But at the end of the day, when it comes to finance, unless there is a project that we finance, unless a project which is undertaken, then the benefits will accrue. If there is no project, there will be no benefit. So if we, at this time, Afghanistan is not able to get much of the funding for projects which are otherwise very productive or very lucrative, because either there is a war going on, or there's a difference of views between Pakistan and India, or Pakistan and Afghanistan on water. There's uncertainty and so on. So if this uncertainty is removed, and in fact, Pakistan should also consider chipping in some funds, just as India is doing in many projects, and say that in water sector, we come forward, and if you give us some space in storage, if you give us some space in electricity generation, we will be able to help you. And that would be a good omen for the rest of the investment community, and that can also produce benefits. So the definition of benefit should not be just agricultural benefits and just the physical benefits. The definition has to be expanded. And finally, we have to share knowledge, showcase our projects, expertise. That's also a benefit sharing, because otherwise, if they don't have the expertise, they don't have the people, they don't have the institutions, then they cannot undertake projects. So we need to undertake that support. Now, in order to reinforce these thoughts, I have just 3 case studies that I have included in this presentation, which shows that all what we are talking is not something which is just fiction. There are practical case studies in the world. The Columbia River Treaty is a treaty between US and Canada. The Columbia River, just point out the basic features. After the World War II, there was the whole area, in the Canada and British Columbia and the Montana and other areas were actually being flooded. Now, the 2 countries have decided that they will tame the Columbia River. This is a dam, Libby Dam, which was made by US, and as a result, it had back flooding into the Canadian side because of the reservoirs. But they said, okay, in the interest of the mutual benefits, we will be flooded. On the other hand, the water is flowing like this. The 3 dams were made in Canada, in British Columbia, so that the water was stored, and it was managed and regulated so that the US part was not flooded as it was being flooded. So consequently, these three dams had power generation, and they were allowed to retain all the power benefits. The Libby Dam project benefits were allowed to US. And as a result of these regulations, all these dams here, where the electricity was benefiting because the water was stored and released, 50% of that was that is to be given to Canada, and 50% to. And when the deal was going on, at that point in time, the local grid here said that we don't have that capacity to absorb the electricity. So US said we will absorb this electricity, we will sell it, and whatever proceeds we get in terms of money, half of that will be given back to that. So if the parties work, as a result, the flooding actually has gone, and this has resulted into a win-win situation for all. The second is with regard to Israel-Jordan treaty. There have been, as you know, this is the whole area is in turmoil. The Palestine issue and so on and so forth. Despite a very charged atmosphere, Jordan and Israel have worked together so that Israel can extract water from the Jordan River, 12 million cubic meter in summer and 13 million cubic meter in winter. And as a result, Jordan is allowed to store about 20-25 million cubic meters in this lake called Lake Tiberias. So in winter, and after in the summer part, this water is allowed to be used. So again, despite the fact that the atmosphere was so politically charged, there had been war going on, but they just quarantined that all those difficulties and work on the benefits of water. So they are working together. So it is possible that even in Pakistan, Afghanistan's case, though we don't have that kind of a situation, but if we don't see eye to eye, yet there are examples in the world where the benefit sharing has actually worked. And finally, the position here is the Mekong River Commission. The Mekong is a well-flooded, well-watered area. So there had been not much issue in terms of water dispute. But the downstream countries like Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos, they work together, whereas China and Myanmar were not really very interested. They worked together, they made a commission so that they do all those things which we just heard in the previous session. They prepare projects, they calculate, they model use of water, they calculate benefits, they share benefits, they prepare projects, they disseminate data, and so on and so forth. So consequently, there had been significant development of water use in this area. Otherwise, Cambodia, for instance, was one of the poorest countries in that area. Now comes the benefit and costs. Now, what we had heard in the previous session was basically on the upstream side. That is, we are looking at what is the water availability, how do we model agriculture, and so on and so forth. Actually, the benefits are both tangibles and intangibles. There was no modeling, there's no discussion whatsoever on, there are so many other benefits. Water, if we have a mutual understanding and we begin to share benefits, then apart from the tangible benefits, there are many intangibles that actually accrue and which are much, much, much more valuable than others. Now, coming to the tangibles, now it is easier to work on financial and economic costs, and similarly financial and economic benefits. Now, when it comes to financial benefits, we take cost of project, how much does it cost, so many dollars, and so on, and we take the benefits, and that's a simplistic approach. But one would like to have models, which again, we need to probably give some feedback or take on some other projects, is to how to estimate the economic benefits. Just to say that because water is there, and so we have agriculture, and the agriculture produce has certain benefits which can be valued on the market rate, but we need to also remember that the market is also fluctuating. It also varies with the rest of the world market. So the model will not be a simple model. And similarly, then economic benefits are much more than just financial numbers. And similarly, the financial costs. But again, it is easier for those who are good at financial and economic modeling to calculate and come up with a number. And similarly, the cost of infrastructure. When we talk about dams, we talk about canals, we actually do some rough costing. But when it comes to, so every time we need to do a thorough work because that's what's important. Intangibles are extremely important. That's where I want to. Now, first of all, if there is peace, if there is agriculture, there is elevation of poverty, there is food security, there is no terrorism, people will not go fighting with each other. The environment will improve. In fact, if the environment improves, then the investment comes. Otherwise, all those economic and financial benefits are just theory. They will not work. Similarly, it will create jobs. And above all, if the relations improve between the parties, then you don't need to incur military costs. There are tremendous military costs that we actually incur. We create so much tension across. There will be peace, and then there will be knowledge flow from across. And knowledge, as we just now discovered, that we just talked about a few things, and there were new offshoots like Karbala. And once the knowledge begins to multiply and mushroom, there's a mushroom growth.
Where does the political economy stands? Tangible or political economy questions? Tangible?
Well, it depends upon how you define political economy. Now, to my mind, it will be in intangibles, but it depends upon how the political economists define a political economy. At the end of the day, you have to see that when the parties begin to work together, they begin to understand that there will be strategic benefits. If we understand that the peace has a peace dividend is something which is very important, then one can say, let's value it, let's calculate it. The other is that you apply your mind and try to understand that what, in terms of the military costs, in terms of the terrorism, and in terms of the inflow, and so on. So that's how, but it depends upon how one wants to define. But to my mind, it will be an intangible benefit. Now, when I talked about benefit sharing, I also would like to talk about political constraints. Now, between Pakistan and Afghanistan, it is very difficult to open up a dialogue. When we talk about benefit sharing or anything, people would say, you have given a theory, you have talked about tangibles, you have talked about models, you have talked about everything, but we cannot talk with each other. So how can actually it will matter? So there has to be some strategy how to open up. Otherwise, all these will be theory and it will be a good report and you can put it in some shelf. So it's very important that we address the political constraints, which means that we need to use some mechanism, whether direct or direct and indirect. There have been some diplomatics, there have been some think tank efforts, but very little diplomatic efforts. I remember I had written letters to our own foreign office to set up a small desk. We should only talk, only think, only live on trying to promote cooperation, but that has not happened. So we need to talk about it not only with Afghanistan, but also with donors, with the Americans, with the Trump, and with no Trump, with China, with other. Try to have a case prepared, show them in detail as to how it will actually improve the situation. So we have to knock the door. This will be very difficult. It's a political constraint has become more difficult at this time, but it's not something which is insurmountable. I just told you about Israel and Jordan. Now it was almost impossible case. But there are ways and there are efforts and there have been research and there have been movement that have to be moved. Similarly, the donors like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, others need to be approached that the benefit of this area, the benefit of investment and the benefit and security of the investment lies in this. Data sharing, of course, the perception I have already mentioned, the perception is that everyone, the moment there is a program or a project on the Afghani side, we feel very strange. And all sorts of literature and newspapers and talk shows, and there's a site called Third Pole. If you go to that, you see all sorts of negative propaganda comes out and it pollutes the mind. Whereas the reality of the thing is that it's only 1.8 MAF and only a few projects. If at all, there is no benefit sharing. And if there's a benefit sharing, There's a lot of benefits that Pakistan, and in fact, the people living in this area will get. Not only the people. If there's a big war here, it's not just Pakistan-Afghanistan war. It will be much bigger war. So the dividends are tremendous. But so much is the negative perception and negative communication. So we need to do something about it. Now, investment risk I've talked about. Now, the whole thing boils down to lack of institution. You can talk about doing these things, but there has to be a driver in the seat. There has to be an institution. There has to be somebody who should be charged with moving the things forward, whose bread and butter should depend upon making benefit sharing work. Only then things will happen. So at the end, I have given a way forward. And I think this is the way to go. First of all, we should tactfully open the dialogue. I think tactfully because at this time, it's a difficult task. But there are communications going on with Afghanistan even now, whether it's a military communication, whether it's a diplomatic, there is conversation which is going on. And I remember when there was a trilateral form between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and US. In the first meeting, the Afghanis did not fly to Doha because they said, we will not like to talk to Pakistan. But within, as soon as they came and sat with us and we discussed, within 3 days, they were asking me, take us to NARC, get us visa for this. And so there is a lot of miscommunication and gap. Once the barrier is broken, on the other side also are actually brothers like us, and they want to move forward. Then basically, I am saying that each country to establish dedicated institutions, then we need to move and create more confidence, which means more seminars, more interactions, more interchange, more data, and showcasing our project, inviting them to our projects, showing our hospitality, and so on. And then training, we can actually provide training to them in a number of fields. Finally, there has to be a Kabul River Commission. That's what my recommendation. Instead of saying right from the beginning, let's discuss the treaty and you bring your brief and I bring my brief, and behind me are 10 experts who say, please, if you do this, you will sell Pakistan, and somebody sitting there says this won't work. So the approach should be that we should move like as in the Mekong River Commission. Move forward towards forming a Kabul River Commission. Now, as you heard in the previous session, there are so many uncertainties, assumptions in data, and so on and so forth. So this commission should comprise of experts of not only water and electricity, but also from sociology, from diplomacy, and so on. Work together, prepare projects. They should prepare Project Kama, Project Sarobi, Project XYZ, Project the costs, because it will work. But the fundamental thing is we are going to share the benefits. So once that commission exists, as in the case of Mekong River Commission, it exists, it actually functions. Data, there has been, if there's, you need to put up data network, as you said, let's put it together. So they should see their common benefits. And then later on, as they can do this, they can move forward and make projects, briefs, and so on. In this process, they need to be supported by international agencies and at every stage. So we need to talk to international agencies, we need to talk to diplomats, we need to talk to countries who matter and get their input so that at least the perception or the ice that is between Pakistan and Indian relation, Pakistan and Afghanistan is melted. It is not, even in Pakistan and India's case, in 1947, after having about 2 million people dead, we could finally have an Indus Waters Treaty. So there is no way, there is no reason to be pessimistic that this is not possible. There's a lot of important role which civil society, think tanks, NGOs, media, academia, researchers have to also play. Because unless the perception is corrected, and unless, but they need material. This material will come from these institutions. The dedicated institutions have to give them the briefing material so that they can feed the system, and thereafter the benefit sharing can take place. So this is what my theory is, that there is a lot of potential for benefit sharing. previous approach of division, negotiations, straight away jumping into treaty will not work. Take a step-by-step stage. Pakistan needs to come forward. Think of a bigger pie. Don't just think of tangible benefits. Have a complete picture in mind. And finally, when we talk about these models and everything, they may take time. The analysis may take time. The assumptions will keep on varying. People will keep on changing. So my recommendation is that there are certain projects for which value judgment can be made. So we need not wait and say that when the final analysis comes and costs and benefits and tangibles and everything is worked out, then we will start. We have so much to start now. And there are a few projects which we can say straight away can be undertaken. And thirdly, from a ballpark point of view, we can see that Pakistan is not to be a big loser. In fact, Pakistan could be a big gainer if it takes the step and comes forward to make the benefit share. Thank you very much.
The floor is open for any questions.
Thank you, sir. Really, this was an eye-opening presentation because when we are talking about the transboundary rivers, we always focus on the eastern rivers. That what is mentioned, but this is also a big area. So when we are talking about the transboundary issues, there is lack of reliable studies, reliable data. And whenever we took the cases with the India, we always lose because we don't have reliable custom data what we have to say. For example, we don't have groundwater pattern, we don't have the environmental data, these things. That's why I just shared the PCRWR and the last point. Transboundary effects on groundwater and surface. We are going to study the flow patterns towards either groundwater is moving towards India or vice versa, and what the surface contaminations are received from the India. But when we are talking about this Kabul River and transboundary, so your presentation shows that we are on one point we are upper riparian and we are lower riparian as well. So is there some studies or reliable data available from our side? Someone conducting the studies that if there is a burst condition, we say that no, we are not going to share anything to each other. Then what are the possibilities to divert our Chitral basin to Nowshera? And when we are sitting with the Afghan, so do we have some data that we can share that this is the actual position, and if you are going to break this relation, then not only we, but you will be the loser. So do we have some set of studies?
Yes, certainly. We on Pakistan side, we may not have all the data that is required, but we have a good set of data. I have seen personally data with WAPDA. When they were thinking, when the discussions with Afghanistan started about sharing water treaties, they have data and they have calculated, they have actually made a pre-feasibility study called PC2 study, in which actually I have a diagram in my computer also, which shows that the Chitral River can be diverted into Swat River, and Swat River takes it to Munda Dam. From Munda Dam, it goes into another tunnel, takes it to Warsak, so that Warsak does not suffer because of the diversion. And then from Warsak downstream, it goes back to Nowshera. So there is, I would say, not all the data that is needed, but they have the data. Similarly, PMDC, PMD, or NESPARC, I have seen documents in NESPARC also. So there is reasonable data that to say that all this is not theory, it is possible. But it was never done because, first of all, restraint, it doesn't mean that we should sit across the table and threaten the other party and expect that there will be a treaty. This has been an internal study. This is, as Sheikh Saab said, and as I tried to allude, this may be a bargaining chip at, in the worst situation. This is not the way we want to go. We want to go through a cooperative benefit sharing approach. But to answer you that, yes, there is on Pakistani side. But on the one side, there is a dearth of data, severe dearth of data. And in fact, many of their gauging stations were actually destroyed during the war, and they could not rehabilitate. I was expecting that USGS, who had spent a lot of time using satellite and others in that area, they have actually mapped almost every pixel of that band. But the data for water, and in fact, water data is not static. It has to be over the years. It can't be just this is a pixel. So that is not complete. That is the situation.
Before I ask a question, Milan, there are about a dozen people who are attending it as a webinar. If there is any question from any one of them, we can prioritize that.
This is one comment from Afia Salam, who's saying that the peace dividends need to be discussed with those who seek non-peaceful methods, and the findings from this study, especially regarding benefit sharing, should be shared with the military strategists on both sides of the border.
Okay, no question.
That's a good comment.
Hang on, sir.
I have just only one observation. In your lecture, you stated the requirement of more dialogue and all that. What I have found, going back to the time when you were Secretary of Power, and we were conducting the seaboard inclusion studies and all that, I think that among our sense there is very little sort of an interactive process with regard to this transboundary issue like that. And it is among maybe a very small people or good people who are undertaking. And the awareness was that among even for our federal and provincial institutions and department is very minimal. So I think it is a very important upcoming issue, rather an issue which the future is going to cover. So I think that this should be a starting point. I still recall we had a meeting in NESPARC House, Lahore, where these 3 studies were presented to you, and you said that we need to have a water security plan for the country. And at that time, you also proposed that we should start writing in the newspapers and all that. We should project our viewpoint because the Indians, and that time you were talking, Indians are so much on that very issue. So I think that this is something which is lacking and which is required in order to have all these things which we are considering in our mind.
I fully agree with you. In fact, if you see the second point here in my each country to establish a dedicated institution, I remain fully devoted to that. There is no other way. It's not a part-time job. But apart from that, because the lethargy of the government, of course we should get that done. But even if you make it, there will be another commission. So you need these people to push them, to give them thoughts, think tanks, the NGOs.
This is a reality now.
Yes.
This is a reality.
Yes. And so what I'm saying is, apart from what maybe a few years ago I said is needed, I now add to it. You need think tanks, NGOs. Of course, you need a government full focus. Driver is needed because nobody moves without that. So there is a need for institution, absolutely. And we need to then, because it's specialized knowledge, specialized work, specialized efforts, this has to be objective. It can't be just government. So therefore, this is the package that I now propose to take on.
My question is related to that. So why we have failed so far to establish such a commission, and what agency can support us? Why an institution we as in Pakistan can initiate for establishment of such a review committee?
See, that's a very good question. The whole system is kind of paralyzed. They are not thinking, visualizing beyond what they are facing today. And it's going on for quite a number of years. As I said, I personally wrote a letter to Foreign Office to at least start the dialogue. There's an organization created in 2009 or so called PETWO, Pakistan Transboundary Water Organization in Islamabad. It was created. To move forward, but this was a big organization which was not just the Indus Waters Commission. It was a Pakistan Transboundary Organization. But then the mindset was to accommodate a few people, get Kishan Ganga project taken forward, and once that objective was achieved, the curtain fell. So, I mean, that's a sad story. But we all think tanks, ourselves keep on trying to say that at least, please, one day they will hopefully create this or such an organization that it will take forward.
But sir, I'm sorry to cut you, but the question is that there are so many opportunities of regional cooperation. Three case studies that you presented, there are results of the regional cooperation. I was luckily part of this Columbia River Basin initiative in Canada from the Canadian side. That was only made possible through exploring the science and the regional collaboration. Are we part of the regional collaboration? Do we have a regional partnership on this? I know there is a World Bank initiative called SABI. How active we are in SABI and how active we are in the region, especially on the regional collaboration, and how active we have explored the science. Is there any forum that is exploring the science?
Basically, the one which I know of is the Abu Dhabi Dialogue, in which the regional organizations do participate.
Maybe this is our opportunity. I think Pakistan should actively work on the regional initiatives.
See, our region is very. Our region is.
But because there are other people listening, sir, just protect my comment. Any other question? I just want to keep, because I don't know there are overseas people or not, so that we so just make sure that we speak in English and they are.
One question is regarding the possibility of starting small scale or medium scale project instead of waiting for a treaty which can serve as a pilot opportunity for benefit sharing between people, more on the line of CASA 1000 project.
So can you take that question together with another question? Yes, sir, your question.
Thank you very much. It was very wonderful and very good presentation. I have a specific question in order to work out policy outcome for benefit sharing approach. As proposed or worked out the alternative to divert Kunar into the Swat, I think being Muslim, as per Islamic jurisprudence, this should be the least preferable option between the two riparians which are Muslims, and also as considering the grounds of humanity. So, in order to move forward with the benefit sharing approach, my specific questions are: if political constraints be addressed, then what are risk factors involved and can be overcome at diplomacy level as India is involved in overall Afghanistan scenario? Number two, do you think that the proposed commission can address all kind of specific modalities required from both riparians in order to achieve a win-win scenario from such a policy recommendation through benefit sharing mode, that either of the riparian would not be exploiting resources at any stage or need some additional coordinated work in addition to the commission proposed? So my name is Kamar, sorry I did not introduce, my name is Kamar Javed. So I am PhD scholar at International Islamic University working for climate governance.
So I'll start with the first question on the webinar. That is the possibility of medium or small projects to start with rather than waiting long. Yes, that's why I said right from the beginning that the results of the model studies and simulations and so on and so can continue, but there has to be a valued judgment. And the valued judgment is that there are a few projects that can be undertaken right away. And it shouldn't be one party value judgment. For instance, I may say this particular project, Pakistan and Afghanistan representatives have to sit together and come to this conclusion, for which we need to have communication. we need to overcome the communication barrier. We say and that the first fundamental point of that will be that we will have to say that we are going to be supportive. Only then they will begin to listen. If we appear to be saying that if you say this and I will go, it won't work. So the point is, yes, one or two projects which both parties sit together and find through their understanding that are going, there are so visible, so unquestionably visible benefits, then it can be done. But the first block, start some kind of communication. We can say that yes, we are ready, and in fact, we can even sweeten it by saying that if there is one project, we would like to invest in that. It's like following the Indian footsteps. But what's wrong in following whatever is the right approach? We can say that if there is a project, we will also give our manpower. We will also give you training. So find out. And so I agree with this suggestion on the webinar that we should at least get started. It will be a confidence building measure. Now coming to sir, two questions that you had. First, you said the political interference.
If political constraint be addressed, then what are risk factors involved and can be overcome at diplomacy level as India is involved in overall Afghanistan scenario?
See, India's involvement should not send us into a panic. We left them space and they have come. So we have to find out space for ourselves. Now, political discussions, if for instance a speech, if some politicians make a speech from here and the other make, that's not the way to proceed. There are political niceties and there are political hazards also. Through our diplomatic channels, through all other means of communication, including friendly countries or whatever, as you said, we are maybe brotherhood of Muslims and so on. Get this discussion going on amongst the people who matter, because think tanks are actually meeting occasionally. But the think tank reports are taken as if these are reports of some people who are not fully in the nitty-gritty of the things, and they get on the sideline. Involve the people who are in the government or in the diplomacy, and then we can actually overcome the communication gap. Once that is done, then of course there will be not much hiccups. We need to build confidence in the same approach. If we also indicate that we have resources to contribute, if you put resources on the table, it gives confidence that we are serious. We don't put resources on the table and only say that we are going to discuss, I have this map, I have this presentation, we should, and for that we need to do thought process here. We should be serious. We should remember that we want to be initiators and we are serious, we really mean what we want to say. Then things will come. The second was the commission.
The second was, do you think that the proposed commission can address all kind of specific modalities required from both riparians in order to achieve a win-win scenario from such a policy recommendation through benefit sharing mode?
Actually, commission would be a medium. Commission would be a platform. It will have to collect people from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different engineering and modeling and diplomatic backgrounds. The commission will not itself will be able to do everything. It is not possible. It is a multi-sectoral domain. It will also involve, it might invite some donors, it might get some consultants, but there is a vehicle, a platform where it works. So of course, commission is a driver, is a prime mover, but it needs to be supplemented by thoughts, by ideas, by analysis, by resources to get this done.
How with the other riparian it would link up?
See, the commission is basically, you mean the Afghanistan?
Yeah, yes.
The commission is a joint commission.
Joint commission. It should be there.
It should be. That's what I propose. There should be Kabul River Commission. It should be like the Mekong River Commission, which comprises of 4 countries. 4 countries, and China and Myanmar are at this time dialogue partners. But they are now, initially they were not interested. But once the commission started functioning and started showing their strength,
now supported with the dedicated separate organization like you mentioned earlier for the riparian.
There will be, yeah.
And what do you think about the think tanks? It's mentioned is playing critical role because there's a trust deficit between the different kind of think tanks. Like if I'm talking about LEAD or SDPI or WWF or some IPS, they have different background for the thought process and one way or the other way. Would you not suggest that all kind of belonging to different food of thought, different backgrounds, all these think tanks should also be in a coordinated manner, or should also be in that commission part also?
I would like commission to hear all thoughts, all think tanks. It's not necessary that LEAD and SDPI should always have exactly the same thoughts.
Exactly.
They have their values, they have their own contributions. Let the commission listen and let the commission find out what is the best for both countries. From listening to, instead of just saying, I'm a commission, I have a sort of monopoly of thinking. That's not the way. There would be diversities, there are different shades of thoughts, there will be analysis, but the commission then is the final decision making body. That's it.
I have a couple of kind of suggestions and questions. One is we shouldn't bother about the runoff river schemes in particular. And as far as I've seen in this presentation, like the major contributor is in the eastern part, and most of the dams are run up the river schemes. So the three of them are run up the river schemes. So we shouldn't bother about the run up river schemes in particular because those are not going to affect our water resources. Second thing. Construction of these dams, of course, will benefit Pakistan in terms of floods as well as in terms of sediment transport. As it is a major issue in the Kabul River basin, and we have experience in Warsan Dam that has already the storage capacity is lost due to sedimentation. So. As far as the flooding is concerned, one of our recent study I've carried out with some of my colleagues at Wageningen University. So we have observed based on some GCM projections that 1 in 100 years flood will become about 1 in 5 years flood. So that is really on Kabul River basin, which is quite threatening. And if we consider such studies and carry out such analysis, we can support the benefits going to be kind of common benefits for Afghanistan as well as for Pakistan. And I do agree that the agriculture thing or the reservoir operation thing is quite vital because the low flow season is vital for the storage dams. If Afghanistan and other partners agree with Pakistan that okay they will carry out the reservoir operations for the mutual benefit, then of course these dams and reservoirs will be beneficial for both countries. So thank you very much for the kind presentation and hope you are the modeler here will be considering the sediment transport in your modeling.
Mr. Hala, I must thank you. This is an additional benefit, sediment transportation. In fact, when we talked about watershed, I was trying to imply soil erosion, sediment transportation, and so on and so forth. So that's a very good point, good for elaboration, and I think that should be also in the basket of benefits. Coming to your first point about run-of-river projects, of course you are right, run-of-river project does not consume water. But what I'm trying to say is we should not look like cherry picking. We should not look like, since this doesn't hurt, so it's okay. The other, what I'm saying is we should make a move that we are supportive of your projects. And putting this first sentence, instead of saying we are supporting of let ROR, this is cherry picking, this is ROR, the rest I'm not going to do that. What I'm saying is we make a big statement that we support your projects, but we need to, and then adds to it that we need to also share benefits. So the first statement will put you in good mood, and then I will come along with it. And when it comes to that, ROR is, of course, I won't object to ROR. In fact, if I get more storage upstream, ROR's output will also increase, because so I will tell them this, that look here, if you agree with me with some, so I'm not saying giving in everything outright that Pakistan will only support and need nothing. No, I'm not saying this. What I'm saying is put it in a positive tone, and thereafter, of course, there could be benefits.
Okay, we have to complete. Any comment from outside?
One comment is that water quality can also be an issue, an area for opening the dialogue, since there's a common problem. So water quality in Transboundary River Basin is an area.
Yes.
And Saab has mentioned that for opening the dialogue, we can start the dialogue between technical experts and academia as a starting point, then expand it.
I think it not be just academia and technical, because it is really the technical issues which actually result into ultimate disputes. We need to have diplomats, we need to have people well versed with how to negotiate, people who talk about social benefits, people who sensitize people about the poverty, the intangible benefits that I mentioned. The second point about quality is again very good point. I have actually mentioned it in my presentation. But the approach that I'm suggesting is that instead of approaching them and saying that because of your usage, quality is being deteriorated, that is incriminating. I would rather say we need to bother about quality. Let's go to the commission. Let's work out a plan. That's the way.
Thank you very much. We are all our time. I really want to thank you, and others I hope will join me thanking. I hope this sound reaches messages also to young scholars.